Module 4, Developing Details, Exercise 3, has us looking at a slightly different method of doing 3D windows using 3D printing. Instead of printing them in situ inside of the physical model, though, we're breaking the models out and printing them as separate pieces. So again, we're going to look at what's not printable about windows. We'll modify existing mullions for fabrication, and then we'll leverage the right print settings to get the right results. In exercise 3, we're still looking at crafting windows, but we're going to use a slightly different method this time. What we're going to turn to is a 3D printer to actually build the mullions rather than cutting the mullions out. Now again, one of the things that we need to work through is a process of increasing the mullion size, and there's another issue as well, and that is the 3D printer isn't going to differentiate from a piece of glass to a mullion. So we need to make sure that we're going to hide those later on as well. Now when we're working with a 3D printer, one of the reasons why we're not just printing these in part of the original base model is because the mullion size is so small. Even increasing the size, printing the mullions vertically, we have a lot of spanning that's going to happen, and we have a lot of things that are going to make that 3D printing process very, very difficult. So isolating them and printing them separately is going to build a window that we can put in place in a much easier way. So let's go to a 3D view, and let's begin isolating the windows so that we can send them individually to our 3D printer. So again, I'm not going to do this with all the windows. We'll just start with a couple of the windows and show you the same techniques that are then replicable for the rest of the windows. So I'm going to isolate this particular window. And the next thing that we need to do is increase the mullion size. We need these to be printable. So, 2.5 inches at a 1/16 inch scale is very small. So we're just going to overwrite the overall size and increase the mullion to a 6-inch wide mullion. So 3 inches on each side. Next, we also need to increase the depth a little bit, just making those windows and the window mullions a little bit stronger, a few more layers of the PLA plastic. So one of the things to remember with that 2.5 by 5 inch mullion, we're increasing the size. We need to make sure we remember to decrease that later on in the process. If I look at the edge, one of the other things that you're going to notice is that the depth of each mullion system is different, and that's going to create some printing problems as well. We want this to print completely flat on the base, so I do need to modify both the edge mullion and the top mullion as well. So we're going to increase that to 8 inches. So this is changing the corner mullion by 4 inches and 4 inches. And so now we have a completely flat surface there, and then we'll do the same with the top mullion. And now we won't have any issues with the 3D printing in terms of that process. So the next thing that we need to do is hide the glass panels, because again, the printer is going to see that geometry and it's simply going to try and build it. And what we're really looking for is a window that's going to be transparent. So let's select everything, and then we're going to use the filter to select only the panels, right-click, and hide the elements. This is now ready to export. Simple as that. So provide a name and save. Again, make sure you're using a solid naming convention because this will get fairly complicated if you have a fairly large model that you're putting together. So first step, once you're in Makerware, is to increase the scale. So again, I'm going back to my Excel spreadsheet. I'm going to use the 158.69%. And the next thing that we need to do is essentially lay this down flat. So what the 3D printer is going to be doing is tracing out the lines. There won't be any spanning. There won't be any difficulty in terms of putting this together. This makes it for a really, really simple print and a really nice piece that we can go ahead and glue in place. So simply rotate it around, run the lay flat, and now I have that piece ready to go. So let's do the same technique with one additional window. The same window that was a little bit tricky in terms of getting the line work. We had to use model lines on this one. Basically, I don't have any more complications with this version at all in terms of building the model, because it's going to handle this particular window the exact same way. So again, we're going to select the element and isolate it. I've already made the modifications to the mullions, so I simply need to select everything, run the filter, select the curtain wall panels, and hide them. Now this is ready to export. And we're ready to open that file up in Makerware. So we're going to reestablish the scale, 158.69. And keep in mind, this is a window that's happening inside a very specific frame. So I might want to drop that scale by about 2% so it fits in, but we'll just go ahead and run with the settings for right now. So we're going to go ahead and rotate this around again. And I'm going to use the lay flat command, but I want to go ahead and point it in the right direction so Makerware knows exactly what I'm trying to do. Lay flat. I'll put it down perfectly. And now I want to show one more feature. With two windows, this doesn't make a great big difference, but we'll go ahead and center the model, and then I'm going to use the auto layout routine inside of Makerware. Essentially, this will organize whatever you're 3D printing in its most economical pattern, which is very, very helpful in terms of speeding up the printing process. So you can see it took no time at all to process this, but I do need to go back and check my settings. I want to use some different settings for this particular 3D print than what I would typically do. For starters, there's no reason to run supports. This is all flat. And then while I typically run a raft, this is something you really don't want to run a raft for. These are going to be very small, very delicate pieces, and trying to peel them off the raft is probably going to break them. So I want to make sure my base plate is completely level, because these are going to print directly onto the base plate. I wouldn't do 10 or 20 different windows on this. I would keep it small and simple so that they don't cure very quickly to the base plate, easy to pull off. And I want to increase my resolution to either standard or high simply to get more layers of plastic, and it'll build a slightly stronger mullion pattern for me as well. So we'll say OK to that. I'm going to rerun the export. You can see, again, really no time change at all, just 9 minutes. So the final windows ended up printing out very quickly. They look very sharp, and I'm really happy with that technique in terms of how I want this model to look. So in this exercise, again, we acknowledge why 3D printing in Windows don't always work out well, modifying window mullions for the 3D printing process, and building printer settings for finer detailed objects.